Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope you had a good 4th of July. I'm just getting back here with Clint. Haven't recorded anything in a while, but just looking to have a pretty simple conversation. I figured we talk about how 4th of July was. I know it can be a pretty polarizing holiday. I know it was for my family. It sounds like yours was a little smoother than mine. You got to kind of kick back and relax a bit.
Yeah. I rented a hotel over by the beach in Carlsbad and had the lady in town and just spent a bunch of days at the beach and walking around town, eating, getting fat, you know,
Living the American
standard
dream.
standard American stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I see you got a little sunburn, but was it worth it?
Oh, it was worth it for sure. Well,
Yeah.
I, I've never heard the 4th of July as being polarizing. So what exactly happened on your end?
No, just my family. I mean, they watch this, so I got to watch exactly how specific and how vague I am. But I wanted to say that because, I wanted to take a second and mention that, like, it's weird that we all try to like outshock each other with the headlines and the news, and that's really where the polarization part of it comes into play. Is I went into the holiday looking to spend time with family and friends. And I just feel like a few times we were like trying to measure cocks on headlines for a little while. We're like, "Did you hear about this? Oh no! Oh, did you hear about this? But no, this happened and it's worse than this." It's like, all right, guys, how about we just admit that we're like grilling out some ribs? There's a pool. The weather is literally perfect. I mean, I'm not stressed out about too many things aside from all the stuff you're bringing in the picture. And for me, that's the uniqueness, because it should be a holiday where, I don't know, you're like you lived the American dream. I thought I did. We were having beers. We had pool. We had pretty standard family dinner, but it was more just like one conversation. The thing is, I've talked to a few people, and I've heard that they've had also interesting family gatherings on the 4th of July. People refusing to hang out with each other, that kind of stuff.
See, the key for me was to avoid my family altogether. So
There you go.
that's why I had to go forth. I went and played volleyball for like 6
Oh,
hours straight. It was beautiful.
I envy you. And it was
Yeah,
just was it strangers on the beach? I mean, were you spreading
uh,
COVID?
yeah. Well, yeah, I was. I have a crew of like 30 volleyball players, and we play
Okay.
three days a week. So,
Oh, there's people you've been playing with recently.
yeah. I mean, we've been playing illegally during lockdown because we're not
Ah.
allowed to. We had this one girl had a house. Her uncle had a sand court at his house over in Vista, so we were
Oh,
playing
you
there
didn't even
during
have to
lockdown.
play out a public beach. You had like a private place to play.
No, we did play at the beach because
Oh, okay.
Carlsbad finally allowed us to. I'm just saying for the past couple months.
You were able to,
Yeah, we were
without having to
still
go.
able to. Yeah, exactly.
Do you
So
think if
it's
if you
nice.
went to the beach, would they have detained you or at least pushed you
Yes,
away? Or
yes, they would have. For the first
damn.
2 months of lockdown, it was illegal to be on the beach entirely,
Hmm.
and they were patrolling it 24/7. And then it it is now open, but volleyball is still illegal,
Yeah.
but only on the state beach or only on the city beach. The state apparently they can't enforce, so we were still able to play. It's very confusing and
That's
ridiculous, but that's been the story of the lockdown.
It really has been. To me, it's senseless control. Is I think what it comes down to. There's so many instances where people are like nitpicking over the amount of control to have over a scenario. It's like, well, why don't you just? I mean, we're both libertarians, so people kind of know what our stance is on it. Just let the people pick. It's kind of
Yep,
cliche, but
exactly.
let the people do what they want. And I think, I don't know, as an ideological libertarian, I can't think of this quarantine being a better what's the word? I mean, natural existence, a moment of pretty much self-made propaganda for our cause. Like, all we have to do is pretty much
Yeah,
all we pretty much have to do right now is sit back and go, yeah, because
yeah. No, the past 4 months have been the ultimate red pill for
well,
converting people
people ask
to
me,
at
they're
least.
like, why aren't you making any content? I'm like, I don't need to. The content right now is good enough. I'm just sitting back and watching myself. Um.
Honestly, it has made it tough because
Mm,
it's so. I think we've all feared this moment, but I don't think
yeah,
most of us expected it to happen in our lifetimes, like or at least not imminently. And it's just like one after the next. It's really hit
that's
like
fair.
crazy.
I think between, well, we're talking about the lockdown, but I think obviously it's evil twin is the Black Lives Matter protests and how they're
Yeah.
in stark contrast to exactly what the the lockdowns are. Lockdowns are everyone stay in. Like to me, the worst example were people who weren't able to properly mourn and bury their dead. To me, that's the
Yeah.
worst example for anything. Um, you know, I come from a
I think
family. Like if so, one of my family members died right now. Thank God none of them did. But if they did, and I wasn't able to go see them right now, I would be livid. Every single day for me would be agony, knowing that there's people able to protest something, and I had to play by. You don't get to play by the rules because of your cause, but my cause is a dead family member. But that's not worthy enough of being able to, leave the house, and that's a
well,
major double standard out there.
yeah, brutal. And not to mention the fact that, they say stay indoors if it saves one life. Well, simultaneously, these people with dementia are dropping dead left and right because they haven't been able to see anybody for 90 days.
Yeah,
And, they've forgotten the names of all their children because they haven't had any sort of reminders and they already were suffering. So it's atrocious. And,
my family has a history of dementia and a bit of Alzheimer's.
yeah,
But luckily, like I said, we were all able to. I'm actually almost speaking Spanish. Reunir is the word. Reunite is the word in Spanish. But come together and we had, like I said, we had family members who were old and they really needed this. The one, she kissed me right on the lips. She's 88, I want to say. I'm mid to late 80s, and she just went in and kissed me right on the lips. I work in the restaurant industry. I've been out. I went to the bars. I have not abided by lockdown. I am literally, every time they cross the line, I step over it and then keep running.
mhm,
It's really goofy to me, but I know that, and I know that's my risk. And I went in trying to keep my distance just from a odds perspective. It's like, if this is all the worst, I wanted to, and she just beelined and gave me a kiss because she just doesn't understand lockdown. And the family, the amount of tension in the room at that moment was palpable because everyone's like, she's gonna get infected, but it's like she also needs to say hello to everyone.
yeah,
Like to me, that moment was the quintessential like mental kind of toll it has, and it's the physical, maybe you have a virus. But the other thing about the virus is I heard there's a 99% success mortality
survival
rate.
rate.
Yeah, survival rate. I always get the word wrong. 99% survival rate.
Yeah,
So
less than 1% mortality rate, which is
less than 1% mortality rate. That's it. And
yeah, which I can't imagine locking down the economy and thinking that you're actually saving lives when less than 1% of the people that get this thing are going to die from it. It's just like, do
one,
you have any concept of the actual net damage that you're causing to society by having us all
yes.
sit in our houses? Like, it's maddening.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, they've said violence is just up because to me, violence is like a progressed form of anxiety. Some people are like kind of anxious, but some people don't get kind of anxious. Some people get super anxious, and that's just going after each other. And the thing is, it's like when you're cooped up in a small place with a small group of people, like the perfect example, who was I talking about? And they mentioned tribalism, that we're getting very tribal. But I look at that on a small level, like even if there's maybe 3 to 10 people you talk to regularly, and then there's the amount of people 3 to 10 people you see every day, like when that only is your group you're in, it gets tense. You need to get that like just release valve of just strangers out there, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah, no, it's very bad. And I actually have two buddies that the three of us we've been on a text chain for the past couple of years, and one of them is a kind of Trump leaning libertarian, the
mhm,
other's a left leaning libertarian, and I'm kind of like the classical libertarian. And they between those two, it got to the point that we couldn't even talk. Like the left
really?
libertarian, yeah, the left libertarian was so upset with the guy who was still kind of shilling for Trump a little bit,
Oh.
um,
See,
that
I,
he was
I
just
shill I shill for Trump because to me, I'm actually, I guess this is a nice time to renew my vows, but I would consider myself a classical libertarian like yourself. But I do lean on the Trump side, and I'll say exactly why. I've had people ask me. It's because I see the negativity he brings out of the left. And the thing is, there are good left libertarians. There are good lefties in general. But the thing is, the ones who hold their opinions and don't lash out are the ones I'd rather talk to than the ones who are so willing to lash out against Trump. Because, like,
Sure.
I literally, there's someone posted something very polarizing on personal Facebook. I normally don't comment on personal Facebook at all, but she said something about we have to get Trump. It was like this long paragraph, and at the end, the last sentence was we have to get Trump out of the White House. I just asked, why do we need to get Trump out of the White House? There's nothing. It was just, don't you know? Don't you know? I'm like, no, I don't know. Because the idea of coming in as this idea of coming in as a neutral observer, like day one, like a newborn babe, like I don't know, tell me, convince me. People don't have that idea of having a fresh perspective. It's just, well, haven't you heard the news for the last 4 years? I'm like, let's pretend like that never happened, and you give me an argument. That idea is a little rough. And to me, the people who do give me an argument, those are the people I obviously want to spend my time talking to. But the people who are going to go, don't you know? And are going to bludgeon me with shame. Like, every conversation we're going to have is going to be like that, whether we're talking about Trump or whether we're talking about Skittles. Like,
Yeah, no, I have no interest in people that try to shame me into
no.
behaving how they approve of. It's just like I'm not a Trump supporter primarily because he didn't come out against the lockdowns.
Yes,
loudly
he could have come down way harder.
Yeah, and that to me,
It did a lot of damage in my opinion too. Just sorry.
No, it's fine. He lost a lot of goodwill from the libertarian community in the sense that he never once mentioned the Constitution during this stuff. He never said this is unconstitutional. Well, go ahead.
I did hear him mention he skirted around. He never really said Constitution. He was talking about he's living it up. If anything, it was more confederal than Constitution. He was saying he's going to leave it up to the states. He's like, I want to leave it up to states, which to me is almost interpreting the Constitution. But you're right. He never came out and said it. Which if he did,
if he had come out and said, like, you know, the 10th Amendment says that it's states' rights, and I don't believe that the federal government is involved in this, that'd be different, because he then during the riots he was like, well, we're gonna send in federal, policing to deal with this, and I'm like,
or
well,
even
that's
military level
too.
Yeah.
So on both sides of it, he basically failed the constitutional litmus test for me.
Yeah.
And I just wish he had come out and said early on, this virus isn't as lethal as shutting down the economy indefinitely will be. And, I obviously want everyone to take the precautions that are necessary for them individually. And if you are in the risk category, of course, I understand staying home from work. In that case, the federal government will be there to assist you. He could still go the socialist route, but he didn't do that. He just said, like, basically, here's Fauci, listen to what he says, and Fauci was a fucking con man. So,
complete. And the worst part about Fauci is I think people saw through it very quickly. He had maybe a week of honeymoon, maybe.
Right.
I mean, there's some people like, they were like looking into his past, and then people are like, fuck this guy. Like, eventually, people were like, he had no authority.
Ties to vaccines and stuff. You're just like, oh my god, what are we doing? How is this guy running the show?
Oh yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I don't know if you're big on the comedian Andrew Scholes.
Yeah.
But one of his sketches, he was like, yeah, and then Fauci pops out of his Keebler elf house. And I just heard that one time. I'm like, instant, like, that's the beauty of comedy in my mind. It's like, I just picture him coming out with a little Keebler hat. It's like, well, this is what we found in the Keebler elf facilities today. Our laboratories have come up with. We have no idea. The mask might help. They might not.
I love Scholes. He's like one of the few. I mean, not one of the few. There's actually quite a few. Like, I would say, I don't. It's so funny. The political spectrum is so fucked up that a guy like Scholes, who I would think of as kind of a libertarian, he's put on the right. He's a right winger because he's willing to say shit that's inappropriate. And it's
exactly. But the thing is, I found him. I mean, I had listened to him before, but he actually always struck me as a lefty before, and I couldn't like him. But over this lockdown, he's been very liberty-minded, and at least liberty-minded, where he's like,
yeah,
I think he is left, but I think he understands the value of speaking to a wider audience. And it's more of a challenge comedically, I would argue. It's very easy to just jump into the hive mind cultural Marxist perspective. And the funny thing is, he actually, I find, stops people short going on the cultural perspective. That's my bigger issue with a lot of what's going on right now, especially over this lockdown. It's the control of the way people are talking and everything like that. Because obviously, I mean, I'm kind of going back a few steps, but like when we were going back to lockdown and the tribalism is that's exactly where Marxism takes root. When you're getting back to your fundamental ties with people, when you're talking to your parents, when you're talking to your spouses, bosses, I mean, whoever the people that have the most sway over your survival, essentially, is the way a Marxist would say it, mm-hmm. is an issue. And when you're not what the other thing is, I personally, I'm in the restaurant industry. I see people face to face. I get to confront my source of income every day. But one thing I've talked to my friends that work from home is sitting at home, man. You get those keyboard balls, and I'm not sure. Like the conversations people are having are completely shifted from the ones you'd be having face to face in the office, much less on a TV. A phone call, or even just getting lunch with someone that you're about to do business with. Shifting all that conversation online has really changed the way people are talking to each other. And I think that is starting to sway people to be a little more aggressive, which is starting to translate to more aggressive behavior in the real world as well. Do you think that this is kind of something I've been working with? I was curious to see what your take was on that. Just people becoming more aggressive because they're not interacting in real life as much.
I think that's totally true.
Okay.
I mean, it's part of you could just see it over the past 20 years as we became more and more of the comment culture on,
that's true,
YouTube comments, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Of course, if you don't have to, I forget who said it, but it was like basically men have the constant threat of being punched in the face that constantly culls their behavior. It prevents us from being assholes because we don't ever, you can't cross that line with a man in person. Right. Whereas on the internet, I can say whatever the fuck I want.
Exactly.
So I totally agree. And the fact that they've locked us down and not had us go to work or be around anybody has allowed everyone's conversations to be even further radicalized and further polarized. And and
it's repetition. The way I see it is repetition. Because I look at it, when you look at if you want to go completely I don't know, Google statistics and look at all the conversations you have in a day and look at how many of them you were able to be radical in versus many of them you're able to be just orderly, grounded in. I suspect that just since lockdown, people are able to, because they can't go for a walk, they can't go to the gym, they can't do all these things which were their ways of venting. Now you're having to matriculate it into more things. And the funny thing is, I think the people who are getting away with it are starting to think they're better at it. Some confirmation bias. So you're maybe having conversations from a more, and this is kind of I don't know. We'll probably make this the I'm going to give you a solid ask here in a second for kind of maybe the sound bite. But do you think that people are trying to go towards maybe where their identity lies in conversation more often? Because I get to go out in public a lot, and I see people maybe having questions about their identity, like going back to tribalism, like which camp they're in. People are running to. They're trying to label people a little quicker than I noticed pre-March.
Oh yeah, the battle lines. Are
you Hatfield or McCoy? Yeah.
It's totally. That's why I'm so concerned. That's why I get the vibe of an impending civil war so often now. Is that even amongst family members, my grandma was living with my mom, and my mom's kind of a Fox News person. My grandma's a CNN person, and they're just at each other's throats. And I'm like, you raised this woman. What is happening? And I don't watch either of them. So I'm just I play mediator between the two. But that's just a microcosm of the greater cultural divide where it's like you were saying earlier, the cultural Marxist tendencies that have kind of infiltrated through our collegiate system and now through our media and everything else. It's just it's not pretty, man.
No.
I mean,
and really I guess you led that right into kind of most important question I'd like to ask you today is, what do you think cultural Marxism is? Because when I looked online, I read an article probably about a month and a half ago, and it kind of stuck with me that what is happening now is a cultural Marxist revolution. It's no longer they've given up on government, they've given up on maybe economic means. Now it's a cultural movement, and I didn't really buy into that until I saw the way it was affecting not only internet culture but my daily life. And that's really where, when I tied those two, I was like, this is becoming an issue. So to ask again, what is cultural Marxism to you? Because I had to dig for it, and I'll give you my answer here in a second.
Sure. Well, first off, I would say that they haven't stopped going the economic route. It's that they have decided, I think correctly, that you have to take over and win the culture war before you can take over the government and then take over the economy.
They see the longer picture to it.
Yeah,
I see.
and that's kind of the nature of China, modern day China, and their capacity for longer term planning.
Yep.
And I think that the theory I've been operating from is that we were being infiltrated through Russian Marxist revolution, and when the USSR fell in the early 90s, China picked up the playbook and they just said, "Hey, we have a shortcut here. We've already got, the groundwork was laid in the 1960s."
Well, have you ever heard Yuri Bezmenov? Because sorry to interject. He was a KGB essentially turncoat. Yep. And he pretty much said he and not only that, exactly what you're talking about. He warned us. He said, he's like, I did my job, and that's why I'm trying to tell you, like, beware. I'm now an American. I have a vested interest. He's like, I am a turncoat. I was undermining your entire society. And I think from when I listened to his interviews, it seemed like he felt the weight of his sins from almost a universal truth perspective. He knew that what he was doing was bad, so he felt the need to, like, hey, correct it. I can tell as many people. But the funny thing is, you mentioned Yuri Bezmenov. He's not a household name. He should be.
No.
The man, he really should be. If you're doing, I'll put it this way: if you're homeschooling your kids, there should be at least one day dedicated to Yuri Bezmenov and his revelation. Really,
I agree. The only extrapolation I did from his findings and his reporting to us in the 1980s was that he didn't see the China aspect that I'm discussing. So,
and he passed away. He passed away before it happened.
Right. So
but the funny thing is, he died thinking that he'd won. Well, he died thinking that it was over, though. That's the one thing that struck me in his last few interviews. He's like, he didn't know the Chinese, but he had a very ominous tone. He's like, you guys think you're winning, but that's what struck me about the way he was saying it. Is he had felt like the groundwork was already ripe, and he just knew someone. He didn't know it was going to be the Chinese. And that's the thing, is like you're saying, the Chinese are pretty much the worst people you'd want to have that playbook in their hands. Because the thing is, if America flips culturally, Europe is already taken. South America would be the next bastion, I feel like, culturally. Yeah. And as a half Latino, I see two separate battle lines, because it's almost, I am half white, half Latino. I'm watching what they're doing in Spanish. I'm watching what they're doing in English. It's two separate things, but they're pushing on all fronts right now on cultural Marxism, and I guess I'll give you my share. Is to me, cultural Marxism is the idea that you shouldn't be on your own. Because to me, the opposite of cultural Marxism is cultural stoicism, where it's like, I can have something. And honestly, this goes back to like basic aesthetics. Like, if you see something beautiful, keep it to yourself because you think it's beautiful. That's it. Now, whether you're making music, whether you're painting something. Now, if you're doing it for, if you're trying to make money off it, that's where capitalism actually comes into play. That's why being a stoic capitalist actually plays very well. If you're the best artist in the world and you keep it to yourself, but you sell all your paintings, the opposite being, if you're a cultural Marxist, you feel the need to share everything. And that's the issue we're having right now, I feel like, in society, is like you have like Instagram. People are now sharing every aspect of their creative process to the point where what is being created anymore? Now the creative process is almost the product, and we're all selling to each other, which it's accelerating skill growth on one hand. But no one is a master anymore. There's no master craftsman. Like, you got to think, there's times in the medieval era where there was maybe I don't know, 12 to 2,000 smiths in the world who are just capable of making things out of metal that no one else could do. Like now, obviously, metallurgy is completely changed, but just that level of power to be like the Picasso of an era or whatever, Da Vinci, to have just that much creative power, it's spreading around like wildfire. The question is how are we going to use it, and what are our minds going to be trying to portray in what we're doing, and that scares me because that's where the Chinese are almost setting a playbook for themselves to be different. They're outlawing all the things they don't want religiously, ethnically. I mean, really anything. Like they have complete control. Like and cultural. Well, that was I was coming from culture, so I excluded that. I was saying, and the funny thing is, they're almost ignoring militarily because they understand they can win on all other fronts. Because it's not a matter of even projecting their culture on other people. For them, homogeneity to me is the most important thing. The influence to them, I see, they think will come and fade. They might have a decade where we hate China, and they're like, that's fine. That generation of Americans, that generation of Europeans, that generation of Africans, they're going to be looking at right wing in a decade anyway.
Yep.
And that's totally true. That's the cycle I see. Is they're like, they're just going to keep demonizing people who get trauma from in whatever way from this playbook, and then they're just going to dismiss them and just bring up they're just going to get better and better at getting the youth to buy into this, and to the point where all youth buy into it. And that's like a 40-year plan, but that's what worries me, man, because like they're getting rid of like South Park episodes, Golden Girls, and they're doing that here on an international level. That's exactly what they've been doing in China for the last decade plus. The early 2000s, they really started turning up the cultural censorship.
What's so disturbing to me is that they appear to have won the culture war without a shot being fired, and
it's because they don't even have their piece painted on the chessboard. Like they're the person that's at the chess table whispering to both players while they lose pieces. That's why.
I get it. I'm just saying I can't believe that the American spirit of individualism was subverted so easily. Like I don't know how that happened. For me, it came not out of the blue. Obviously, it took decades, but I just thought that the fight, like the actual turning point, the actual moment where we just said to ourselves, like, okay, we're now going to be so woke that we have to cancel the Golden Girls who had, like mud
masks on
in like the 90s. Like I thought for sure we wouldn't get there without major.
I'd really like to see. I'd really like to see the polls on what black people say about that, but I would never run the poll. But here's the thing: I would never run the poll because that's racist, and I wouldn't want to decide which 100 people are black. There's so many mixed people anymore. It's like we're like a couple generations away from like not even having like full black people.
Yeah, I ultimately I don't know why. I just felt like we were so close to getting away from race.
And I don't even say that like a bad thing. I'm saying like in the United States, there's just so many mixed people that it's like when
I totally get.
Like what is Drake? What is Drake? Well, look at the Kardashians. They're Armenian, but they act like black women. I know black women complain about it too. That's the funny thing. You go on Black Twitter.
All their kids are half Armenian, half black now too. So
and that's the thing is like now Northwest is gonna be. Her name is Northwest first off. But she's going to be the direction of her culture. I guarantee it. Her father's primed her for it. All she has to do is not fuck up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even if she does fuck up, she's still going to be on E, propagating the next generation of Marxists.
Well, here's the thing is... Go ahead.
We got messages asking for our take on Kanye. So what do you feel about... Is he actually running? Is this not a joke? I
don't know. That's what I was actually building up to. I was trying to do a natural segue because I wanted to talk about Kanye. First off, I am a huge Kanye fan, artistically, personally. I think he's the old school kind of artist who puts his soul into his music, good, bad, and ugly. I mean, he's punk. And the fact that when you're a metalhead. And you put in your pain and your suffering and everything. Like, I get that. He does that, but he does it through hip-hop, There's plenty of blues out there that does the same thing. Some people don't listen to blues; they listen to all upbeat. I mean, my thing is this: when you listen to music, you gotta listen to the good, the bad, and the ugly of the music too. There's some sad songs you gotta have that in your repertoire, or else you're gonna be the crying wreck on World Star. I just don't understand what is happening. Or the last video I saw was that woman who got followed, and she was lost it. She was like crying, like, "Don't dox me." The irony is, oh god, I don't remember how long ago that was, but that split the libertarian community. I feel like. Do you remember the video I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, but I don't think we ever processed that. I never really got an answer on what people thought, but I thought it was messed up because the irony of the situation was he was making fun of her because how scared she was, but she was scared about getting doxxed by the internet. And she got doxxed by the internet. She got shit on. Like exactly what she's afraid of happened. And so there's people saying she's crying wolf, but the wolf came.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's the thing.
For all of us.
You can't keep telling the boy cry wolf story when the wolf's around. Like that's the problem, and that's the
libertarian community seemed to come to her defense, which I was proud of.
They did, but I mean, I didn't even know what to. I fell in right away. I was like that dumb bitch. But I just come home from work and I deal with those women, so I'm like, she sucks. But it wasn't until I like read into it and I got into the threads where I'm like, oh wow, I was off, and not only am I off, but a lot of people they really wanted to lay into that woman more than they realized that we as a society, doing that is not. I don't know. It's not gonna push the needle. It's not gonna win libertarians over. I'll put it that way.
No, for sure.
To the rest of the community.
I'm trying to adjust my outlook and my perspective so much so that like I'm trying to avoid passing judgment based off of a videoed 60-second clip of someone. Like
you never know the context.
Yeah, they've been alive for 40 years. I get a video of 1 minute of their worst moment where they're like, I remember this lady maybe 6 months ago who was saying, "You go back to your country." She was saying that to a Chinese person, and it was really it was fucked up. But at the same time, I'm just like, I don't know this lady. Like maybe that dude cut her off and then flipped her off, and now he gets out of his car and he's acting the victim, and she's acting like a racist, and I just don't know. But ultimately, she's not shooting him. Like she's just saying bad words. Let her fucking go home. Who cares?
Well, the thing is, there's some people who watch that video to get entertained, and there's some people who watch that video to get outraged. I'm of the class that watches to get entertained. Now, there's some people who do. They get on the internet, and I watch them. They sit there and they'll scoff. They're like scrolling. Like I'm a waiter. I work at a restaurant. I wait tables. I take care of bar. Like the thing is, we're on such a skeleton crew now that I do everything. We got rid of like all the people who weren't working. So everyone we have now is pretty much doing everything. So that being said, I'm watching people all day long, and we're not getting that much business. So I got a lot of people watching to do. And I watch people scrolling there. I can see them doing their hate likes and their hate commenting and everything. I'm like, why? You went on the internet. Like the thing is, for me, from a human perspective, I'm sitting there and I'm bored. But you're going on your screen just getting pissed at yourself, and I'm like, it's not even happening. You have an opportunity to have a good human interaction. You chose to go on your screen and find something that piss you off, and you got the endorphins running or whatever you wanted to have happen, and now you're pissed off. Congratulations.
In that regard,
you got to smite someone. Sorry,
I'm guilty of the same thing, but only when it comes to the police brutality stuff. Like I will definitely watch videos, and I don't think I'm doing it necessarily to get upset, but I do get upset. So, when they either brutalize or kill someone needlessly, it's like I think that's the only type of stuff that I watch online that like.
I mean, that kind of brings us back around to Black Lives Matter. The movement as a whole, and the funny thing is, I don't support it now. I'm saying this on after 4th of July, after the Black Panther FAA and FAC, which we don't have to address that, but after that event happened, and before all that, when they came out and said it, I was a little incredulous. I'm like, all right, guys, but like, have you heard of Daniel Shaver? I'm like, have you heard of, like, to me, Daniel Shaver is the worst example, but there's a lot of the thing is, you can't hop in and just hijack the police brutality movement because a black person and make it the black police brutality movement, because you are a racist by making it the black police brutality movement. There's a police brutality movement. Just because a black man died, you can't just pick up pick up someone else's boot heels and start lifting them for them. No. There's already something going on. And thing is, when people, and this is what cultural Marxists do, they take on the identity of somebody else, and then they almost burn out whatever authority there was to a movement. And now police brutality is going to take a step back because the police are going to say, well, we need to step back. And now that's how we get more police state. That's the way I see it, is by like radicalizing a movement that was, I thought, in a pretty healthy place. We were getting to a better place with police. From what I heard, I live in Ohio, they said that the state troopers are told to stand down right now. And the thing is, I've been whipping on the freeway just to find out there's no one there, man. It is Wild West on the freeways right now. And that's temporary. I mean, I know that when the lockdown eased up, there's like that 2-week span, the cops were out in mass before George Floyd. They were out all over the place. I saw 3 cops on the freeway at one point, the same stretch of highway I'm talking about. But now that George Floyd happened, they don't want to be out there. And the thing is, it's like, as much as libertarians want to be these castle law guys and they want to say, well, I'd fuck up anyone that comes on my property, why do we need to let it get to that? That's my thing, is I'd rather reach out there and talk it out with people ahead of time. But I mean, if we just sit back and castle up, that's kind of my yell out to libertarians. I get pissed off when they become too anarchist. One side of it, to me, it's passive. Being an anarchist is a passive approach too. I mean, consider me an evangelical libertarian, but I do think the world's better when everyone around me is trying to maintain my liberty and their liberty. It is something, I think it is the chain stronger when everyone else is supporting each other. Obviously, not everyone's going to want that much. There are going to be statists out there who are going to be afraid, and they're going to want that unified system, and they're a good counterbalance to us. That's fine. That's the thing is, I feel like we're getting down to like the nitty gritty of libertarian, but without the risk of that, where was I going for that? I was talking about.
You're talking about Black Lives Matter. I think that
because it defies the movement. I really think it messes with libertarians because it does go after principles we have, but it pushes the agenda in a direction not all of us necessarily want to go.
Well, yeah, I think the biggest problem with it is that it is tribalistic. To put a skin tone in the name of your organization is like, in my opinion, it's intentionally divisive. I know that the counter argument is that, we're drawing attention because people care when white people get murdered, but they don't care when black people get murdered. The truth is, they don't care when white people get murdered or black people get murdered by the cops. No one gives a shit for the most part, except for the libertarian community, who you are now calling racist because we have been on the front lines calling for police reform and calling for
years
reform for decades. And you motherfuckers come around over the past 5 years acting like this is your cross to bear, and we can't even talk about it. It's just like that's what upset me the most. Is
the double standard there is. I see potential allies at the end of the day.
They ought to be their number one ally.
That's exactly it. That's my biggest issue. But here's the thing: they look at us the same way the authoritarians look at them. Useful idiots. They think we're useful idiots. They think we're the ones that can be used and discarded. And that goes against all of our principles, ideologies. I think that's where the conflict arises between the Black Lives Matter and libertarian community. Because I think your grifters in the libertarian community are getting outed by their vocal support of this Black Lives Matter. I don't know. I read threads and that's what I've seen. I've seen the people who are coming out and saying, yeah, what's wrong? I'm like, they can't figure out exactly where it becomes perpendicular, where the intersections are where you can't cross wires.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they if they just looked at us as useful idiots, I would just consider them wrong. What I take offense to is when they call us racist. That's what bothers me, because
to me that's instantly projection. The thing is, I don't let people. I actually and I was going to mention comedy later on in the show, but to me, comedy is the way that we fix a lot of things. And I think it's funny by going overly progressive with them a lot of times, because when they, like you said, when you put the name black out front of a movement, now you are projecting racism. You are bringing race in the conversation just by your existence. If you have Black Lives Matter on your shirt right now, you just said, I'm black and get out of the way. And the thing is, and I say that because I've served customers, and they have a Black Lives Matter shirt on, and I have to treat them. I have to treat them like a master, like a slave master to me, because I'm trying to get a tip. And the thing is, I do placate to them. I do. I treat them exactly like Samuel L. Jackson's character in Django Unchained. How about that?
Man.
That's how bad I get. Because I need that money.
I don't want to tip that bad.
I'm making a joke, but that's the thing is it shouldn't be that point. We shouldn't be trying to exert that much force culturally on people, and I think that's the issue with like you said, putting a name out front of anything. And I bring it back to a joke every time, just by saying, like, going back to the poll. It's like, if we're going to figure out how many black people are upset with Black Lives Matter, or upset with the lockdown, or upset with this, how black is black? Were you excluding certain people that are mixed? Were you excluding this? Like, what is black? What is white? And that's the other thing, is like, are Hispanic people, are they yellow? Because I don't know if you noticed this, but there's an ethnicity and there's a race characteristic on almost all federal documents. You know why that is?
Appearance.
Well, no, from a census perspective.
Oh, okay. No.
Dude, no, because Latinos were filling out their censuses and black people were not. So they were getting more represented in welfare programs. So they created a new, it's actually fairly racist if you think about it. But now there's race, which is white, black, Asian, whatever. And then there's a separate one that says Latino or not Latino.
Huh.
Have you noticed that?
Okay. Yeah.
That's specifically because they were being the census data was getting skewed. So if you just change the verbiage, it skews the stats, and right. that alone goes to show that there's a desire for the welfare system, as long as I don't have to get in line. I see that as a major problem, because, like, I don't know, are we running low on time? I don't want to keep you up, or how are we looking time wise?
Yeah, I've got like 10
minutes. All right. Yeah. Well, let's finish up with, because I mean, we just touched on race and how that affects libertarians. So should probably exit a little smoother. I found that comedy is the way we get out of this. And one thing I have brought up, and actually it's something I just think about all the time, is one of my favorite comedians of all time is Patrice O'Neal. And I just try to think, what would he be saying right now? What would that man be saying about this whole? Because in my opinion, and here, this is what I want to ask in the comments section or whatever. If you got to this point in the video, if you've ever watched Patrice, what do you think Patrice would say about Black Lives Matter? Because personally, I think he'd be laughing his ass off about it. He always struck me as a very libertarian, very self-sufficient. That's where his comedy came from. He came from, fuck you guys, I'm going to do it myself. And this you owe me attitude, he was never a fan of. He was actually very proud of black people. He thought they could do it on their own. And I think he would be exactly the voice they would have wanted right now.
I think he would have been Eric July, but with comedy as the
fair. Yeah, actually, no, that's a good. Most people don't know Eric July. That's the thing. I guess they don't. No. I agree. I think Eric has that awareness. He's not nearly as comedically as inclined. That's the thing. Eric's also, he's I don't know the guy, but just from his videos, he seems like he's more amenable. He wants to create bridges, while Patrice was all about just burning bridges as violently as he could, and he knew he'd make friends by the wake of destruction he left behind him. People loved him for it, you know. Yeah. But that's the thing, is like all those people, like we mentioned earlier in the show, that for some reason comedy and saying offensive, abrasive things is right wing now. So I'm sure there's plenty of good, I don't know, black comedians who are right wing. The problem is they're all seen as grifters right now, because that's where the culture's at. I'm sure there's plenty of talented people. I'm not getting in front of my screen because of just the way society is. And I don't know. That's why I bring up Patrice, because I know it has existed, which means it can't exist again.
Yeah, I think Patrice, his outlook almost certainly would have been, yeah, obviously my life matters, you motherfuckers. Like,
actually,
he wouldn't need a movement for it. He'd be like, this is such a given. What the fuck are you talking about? My life matters. Yeah, my life matters. yeah, bitch. Like he'd be
He'd
so
be
aggressive about it, and he would be so offended by
yes. The idea that the insinuation
it's
that it didn't
possible
matter.
that he couldn't matter. He'd just be like, "This is such a joke," and
No.
then I think he would have been so brilliantly scathing when it came to the white women that were,
Yes.
championing on his behalf. He would have just destroyed them, and that's what I miss about him most.
I
Is
wish
like
he was on YouTube right now, man, because his skits, if he started roasting, like, if you just take the way he roasted women on Opie and Anthony, all the white women, because that was on Romantic Advice. If he just had a YouTube and he was just doing like all these clips, oh my gosh, this movement would die. I think that man would single-handedly destroy the movement. But now you have Kevin Hart. Actually, Terry Crews right now is the champion. And he's not a comedian.
But he's not funny about it, though.
No, he's not a comedian. He's religious about it. And he's the guy who got known for sucking a dick. So, I mean, I love the guy. He's great. I honestly, what he's done for mental health is amazing. But, when you come out and say that you got raped by Hollywood, yikes. People remember that.
He never came out and said that, did he? I thought he got his
yeah.
I thought.
Oh no, he said he had to do some heavy shit, man.
Oh, did he really? Wow, I gotta look into that.
Yeah, the thing is, I say that as a joke because he's also been a champion of like mental health and like that kind of stuff. And I think that all that comes into play. I think like the trauma that you get is what keeps you silent and blah blah blah. It's kind of this vicious cycle. Some people lash out, some people keep it in, and then they lash out later, and blah blah blah. But I think that's what we're seeing from him personally. Is he's seeing that all this stuff going on, he's like, I can't live with this anymore. And like I'd prefer to be a comedian because I think comedy is the ultimate Joker. I was gonna say trump card, but like it's the Joker. It's the one in the deck that there's no call for. Yeah.
Well, what concerns me is that the Marxist revolution is so pervasive and so widespread at this point that they're able to take down comedians who don't toe the Marxist agenda.
Oh yeah, if you don't cater to the mob.
Purposes. Yeah, for other purposes though. Like it's not that they're not saying Black Lives Matter. It's like now they're getting them on Me Too shit with Chris D'Elia, and
oh yeah,
I feel like it's just gonna be, like dominoes. Like each one's gonna fall, and my fear is that while we have greater access technologically to all these artists, so that it seems as if it would be harder and harder to cancel people, they're still being canceled somehow, and that's what scares the shit out of me.
Well, you just said the one word I try to avoid a lot is the cancel culture, man. Cancel culture is cancer for a culture. I mean, how's that for a bumper sticker?
It is.
When you start, because I don't know. When I run hyperbole, it's like when you start canceling people for what they think is right, whether they're right or wrong. I mean, if we look at statistically, most ideas we have on original thoughts we have as a human daily are gonna be wrong. Mm-hmm. The thing is, if we're just gonna cancel,
if you're thinking creatively at all, you should have some wrong thoughts.
You're going
every
to
now and again.
If you're actually going nothing but net, you're probably just stepping in someone else's footprints in the snow. You're stepping in someone else's footprints. If there's no resistance against you, you need a bit of resistance to know exactly where the path lies. And
it's embarrassing, honestly.
Yeah.
It's so hysterical that they consider themselves progressive with this mentality. How the fuck are you making progress if you're stepping in someone else's shoes all the time? Like,
oh yeah. Well, the idea of statues, man, because that is someone else's shoes. And like I get some of the statues, but I'm not even gonna get in the Confederate. Like, where to me there's legitimate grievances. I'm not even gonna touch that. I saw Jimi Hendrix get defaced. Like Christopher Columbus, fine. He was a navigator. I don't even like. You're gonna make navigation and exploration racist? Okay, he might have slaves on board. Oh my god! Like, I can hear the Marxist replies like from the peanut gallery in my mind, but it's insane because there's certain people. Stevie Ray Vaughan was one.
They tore down a statue of Thurgood Marshall, dude.
I didn't hear Thurgood Marshall. What?
Yeah, it had nothing to do with the actual race or the racism of these people. It's all
the idea of a statue.
It's tearing down our history.
Oh yeah.
Like, they're rewriting history as like as fast as we can watch it or read it. It's
All
like
right.
it's unbelievable.
Well, because I feel like we're getting close to a sign-off statement. What is the history that you feel needs to be guarded the most right now? That, like, obviously we have all of human history. Is, you know, how about we break it down? We'll do 3 different levels because we got maybe a couple minutes here. From an international perspective, ancient history, just widest lens. Is there a particular part? And we'll break it down. I'm going to come down further, so you don't need to go. Stay away from America because that's where I'm going to finish. But
Okay,
from
I would say that the principles of the Enlightenment and the value of individualism is the first pillar that they're attacking. They
like
want
16th, 17th century literature.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, and all the great thinkers that gave us, you know, Adam Smith. They gave us all of the foundational documents that created the Declaration of Independence. I know you don't want to get into America, so I'll leave it at that for now.
Right. No, I think you nailed that on the head, and I think, well, it's definitely a place I need to delve into further. Next would be the interactions of the making of America. So, what part of that, before America was founded, the discovery of the New World, any part of that adjacent to America?
Oh God,
Take your time. And actually, if you want to answer that second, I'm going to ask you the last one also simultaneously, I guess. What part of American history do you think is left out, or because in this one I'm going to say is currently left out, lies of omission, or you're worried about being replaced by? Because this is almost a double where they could have already accomplished it, or something you fear on the future of American history being smudged.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the reasons and the principles behind the Civil War really have been lost, and I think that concerns me a lot because, well, peaceful secession would have been by far the better option.
Yes.
You know, that entire conversation is lost to the blight of racism and of slavery.
Right.
And I understand why, but at the same time, the principle of secession is something that we should have maintained, and we've lost that.
Well,
and now I fear, you know, a bloody civil war in our future because we've so terribly read that history.
I think we would have been a country better off if not. When you say the South won the Civil War, I don't mean the fact that they defeated the North. I'm saying they just got the right to exist, and that time and society would have weathered them to the point where we might have 4 or 5 different Americas right now. Who knows what would have happened with the rest of Louisiana Purchase and all that? You know, like the funny thing is, it probably would have made a whole bunch of different territories, but we could have maybe still had a federal or maybe a couple federal governments. You know, to me, that sounds a lot better than the current history we have. And I don't think a lot of people are even ready for that thought experiment. And I think you, go ahead.
And whether or not, you know, say it ends up with just two large territories, then you get to have the experimentation of the northern principles versus the southern principles,
right?
And then you get to have immigration or
well, even from an economic perspective, having separate governing entities to dictate laws is just better. It's just more decentralization. From a simple economic perspective, I would argue.
And with that principle, you probably end up with a further and further division, and you end up looking more like Europe, which some people would say is bad. I think it would be better in that, you know, we were supposed to be that, even though we were the United States, we were supposed to have 50 experiments. So we're just so fucking like
lost from we're so lost from what the Constitution meant, and maybe we'll have to have a Constitution stream in the future. But I don't want to take too much more of your time. The last question: what would you say is probably the part of American adjacent history? I can maybe give you a couple quick answers if you have a minute.
Well, what do you mean by America adjacent?
Yeah, America adjacent, as far as maybe what was happening as we were getting founded, or like maybe. I mean, to me, I'll give you my answer and then you can follow up. My answer is the Napoleonic story, just the French Revolution and Napoleon, like that whole time. Like the more I read about that, the more I realize I don't know enough, and the more I realize no one has even processed that properly. Like if I was a time traveler, one of the parts I would, if I knew I was like armored or like invisible or something, would be going to like the French Revolution. Like I would want to see what was happening there. that would be, from the revolution itself to what Napoleon did in its aftermath. That Napoleon was Hitler before Hitler.
Yep.
People miss that.
I think we're you're about to get to see what the French Revolution looked like.
That's what I'm saying, dog. Like, I want to know what happened. Like, this is people don't even like. They think they push him away as this like short guy with a Napoleon complex. But the funny thing is, Napoleon wasn't remarkably short for his era. He was known for being aggressive and all that comes with it. But the whole. All I see him as this caricature that Looney Tunes made is this like small little guy who just wanted to conquer the world. Thing is, he was damn close to. If it weren't for a lot of decentralized powers that held him at bay, and a lot of luck and a lot of timing, and the French could have been a lot more than they are now. And he is in the aftermath of revolution. So,
yeah, no, that's a good one. I think I would just go back.
Well, and how it ties in with our own revolution.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's where I was going to end up.
Sure.
Well, I could certainly draw some other historical examples from other countries. I really think that we can stay at home for the lesson that I'm most concerned about losing, and that's
Sure.
the spirit of American Revolution, the capacity to overthrow a government when it becomes tyrannical. I think that is being rewritten as we speak. And
yes.
I think that is being, in the BLM language of whitewashed. It's really being taught as just not a principle that's valued highly enough. The willingness to die for freedom is something that I think is necessary to maintain freedom in any free civilization, and we are almost out of it. It's like, we've got a small percentage of the population is still willing to fight and die for our freedoms, and that's the only reason we still have them. And
I would argue that the Black Lives Matter movement is still a part of that. The thing is, it's the amoeba of this authoritarian. I would argue that the tip of the Marxist spear is actually the tip of whatever we're fighting to defend. Wherever these movements are happening, it's still the American fighting spirit. The problem is, they think they're fighting government while the government system, whatever you want to call this evil, this, the shadow of Melkor, of fucking Mordor and Lord of the Rings, whatever you want to call this malevolent entity, it is like an amoeba. It notices the threat and it just wraps itself around it and it just suffocates it. By like, the thing is, and you're watching this happen by like companies adopt Black Lives Matter, because we're almost in an oligarchy at this point. So all the companies are like, yeah, Black Lives Matter, we're all for it, just shop here. And all the small businesses are dying. That's one of my biggest problems with all what's going on.
Me too.
And that's the scariest thing for me. I think you hit it right on the head. And I just the willingness for Americans to fight for the right to remain the America that we've just been describing over the last hour, it can be dwindling, because I think that the oligarchies are able to pacify us quick enough to the point where nothing's ever going to happen.
Yep. Well, let's hope not. But I got to run, man. I am at Liberty Lockpod on Twitter. So
I have you actually. You're in you're in the shot right now. So you have me at Mike Pause below you, and at Liberty Lockpod on Twitter. Is there anything else you'd like to plug?
Liberty Lockdown is my podcast, and it's on iTunes, all the places. So just look up Liberty Lockdown.
All right, man.
I will be there.
Glad to have you on. Catch you later.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thanks again, Mike.
All right, peace.